All right, guys. So, real quick before this episode of the podcast starts, I wanted to let you all know that this is going to be another relatively short episode because I didn't have time to record a longer episode like I wanted. So this episode is going to be pretty short, just like last week's episode, but what can you do? So, with that being said, hopefully, like I said in the episode, you guys enjoy the new title change and logo change. And I might start doing a format change of the podcast. I'm not sure yet. I'll figure that out when it comes to that. But with all that being said, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. So yeah, enjoy, guys. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the newly renamed Anything and Everything podcast. Because for those of you who have seen SoundCloud or YouTube, and you've looked at my podcast, or been trying to check out any of my podcast, you might notice not only did I change the name of the podcast, I also changed the logo. Because I kind of thought I've been wanting to change the name anyway. Because the Unnamed Podcast is the worst name ever. So, I'd been wanting to change the name for a while, but I couldn't think of anything. So, I just decided I'll just name it the Anything and Everything Podcast. That's what the new title is now. That's what I decided to name it. I know it's not the best, but okay, whatever. Get off my fucking case. So yes, the new name of the podcast is now the Anything and Everything Podcast. Hopefully that's at least semi-decent name. So yes, that is the new name of the podcast. And yeah, I know changing the name of a podcast when you're this far in is like, they say is the sin of podcasting. Don't change your name because it might ruin your brand or whatever, but I ain't got no brand. I ain't getting no money for this shit. So I can do whatever the fuck I want. Screw you. But that's what the logo looks like for now. It's quite a bit cropped off, so you can't really see much. But I'll fix up the logo and stuff like that. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the newly renamed Anything and Everything Podcast. The meaning of my life is nothing more than a constant need for validation. So, with the formalities out of the way, my first topic, per se, for this episode, I'll stick with the positive vibe of the podcast, especially since I've renamed it. I want it to be a usually more positive podcast. Usually. Doesn't mean I won't do some serious topics every now and then, but I do want to make it a more positive podcast, especially in light of my weekend video that I put up, which is quite serious, but I figured I'd talk about, since it's relevant, I guess, very relevant, and it might be more what you'd call podcastception. But I wanted to talk about some of my favorite podcast, some of my personal favorite podcast, because that's why I started this whole podcast in the first place, because I like to watch a bunch of podcasts myself. So I thought, why not? I'll start one myself. So I figured I'd just talk about some of my favorite podcasts and things like that. So I think starting off I guess not necessarily a list, but whatever you'd like to call it. Starting off my list, the podcast is called Coffee with Rachel because it combines the two hosts' names, which it's a couple. They're not married, by the way. I misdescribed them. It's a podcast this couple does. It combines both of their first names, I think. Chris and Rachel. Obviously, the name. So, but that's all I know. So, this is probably one of my favorite podcasts. just because, one, they talk about coffee quite frequently. Obviously, the title. So that's a plus already. Because I believe I've stated my undying love for coffee. That's why I love you. Or rather, my unhealthy obsession with coffee. So, yes. So, that's one reason I like this podcast. And another is, two, they're pretty close to my age. I'm 22, and I think they've said on a podcast episode, I think they've said on one episode that they were like 25 or something. I don't know. So that's close enough to my age to where it's relatable to me. But I'm an adult, so pretty much anything's relatable to me. I'm going to lower the mic because it's covering my mouth. You don't want me to just talk like this, do you? I'm also holding the mic again. I'm going a bit portable with this week's episode. So I'm having to hold the mic. So you'll see me switch hands quite frequently. So yes, Coffee with Rachel is perhaps one of my favorite podcasts. One, they talk about coffee. Two, they're also in their 20s, so it's relatable to me. And three, I just like how passionate they are about the subjects they talk about. So they did an episode last week. Yeah, it would be last week, of course, where they talked about the Las Vegas shooting. And I liked that they were comfortable enough to say what they really thought. Like, they didn't try to skirt around the subject. Most people try to skirt around that whole subject, especially considering it was the same week. But they didn't. And I like that. They weren't afraid to say what they thought on their own podcast, which is why I do that as well. Because I don't give a fuck. I really don't. You all should know that by this point. Come on. I would have to say my second favorite podcast, well, and this is in no particular order because I don't consider one better than the other, really, is, and this is probably no surprise, is Shane Dawson's podcast. Because Shane Dawson is hilarious. The man was hilarious in 2010, and he's still hilarious in 2017. And he has a much better podcast than I will ever have in my life. Shane Dawson has actual guests on his podcast, and he actually makes money off of his podcast and stuff. He has a legit podcast setup. Like perhaps one of the most professional podcast setups I've ever seen in my life. But then again, he has a professional crew doing his podcast. So yeah, I'm just one dude with a $69 microphone and a $252 camera that's 6 years old that I bought off of a used camera equipment website. Bare bones, motherfucker. So yes, Shane Dawson's podcast. I really like his podcast. Once again, they're all hilarious. He and his co-host, Jesse Buttafuoco, because that's clearly Italian. Come on. And if you don't know who she is, Jesse Buttafuoco is the daughter of the dude that was involved in the whole Amy Fisher thing back in the 90s. Look it up. Just type in the word Buttafuoco and you'll find it. It's on the internet. Come on. That was back in the 90s and somewhere in fucking Long Island or something. I don't know. They both have a better sense of humor than I will ever have in my entire life. They can say fucked up shit and get away with it, or I probably couldn't. And I just like the guests that he's able to get on the show. They're great as well. And I just like I like the format he does his in, which is also much more put together than mine. I just start fucking talking. And the segments they have on their podcast are hilarious. Especially the Farrah Abraham time segment, which I just like to watch to see how much they can shit talk one single person. aka the world's worst mom, other than Casey Anthony. Those are the world's two worst moms. I think my next one would be the Jenna Julian podcast, because they're both hilarious. Jenna Marbles. That's who that is, Jenna Marbles, the other big YouTuber. And then Julian Solomita, which I guess that's some sort of like Spanish-esque name. I don't know. It sounds Spanish, but I don't know. They're both hilarious. All right, we're back. My fucking camera stopped recording again. So I had to stop, fix that shit up, and now we're back. So, as I was saying before, I was rudely interrupted. To other big YouTubers as well. And I love those guys. They're hilarious. They're hilarious. Of course, they were hilarious to begin with, but yeah. They're just hilarious. That's what makes that's what makes all these podcasts great. The people are hilarious. Which also probably explains why my podcast doesn't have 2,000 people listening to it. But I don't really care. This is how I am normally, so deal with it. One of my favorite episodes is their most recent one, which I forgot the name of, but in their most recent episode of their podcast, they did a new segment or a new thing where they read aloud Craigslist missed connections, which, if you don't know, Craigslist missed connections, it's basically one of the boards on Craigslist where I guess you can, what I'm assuming the point is, I guess it's just a bunch of creepy dudes and creepy women trying to hook up with people they happen to see at the supermarket or some shit like that. I don't know. I'll just say this. It's Craigslist, first of all, so don't ever go to fucking Craigslist. You might legitimately actually get murdered. I'm serious. You might actually get murdered. I'm not kidding. There was a serial killer who killed people via Craigslist. Matter of fact, I think that wasn't but like 6 or 7 years ago that happened. A dude actually used Craigslist to kill his victims. You will get killed. Or at least horribly hurt. Point is, don't go to fucking Craigslist. Unless it's for the missed connections thing. Those missed connections are some of the most hilarious shit I've ever read in my life. And Jenna and Julian did it even better by like putting on this reverb effect when they read them. They made it sound like it was like one of those sensual kind of things. And it was hilarious. That's probably one of my favorite episodes just because of how hard I fucking laughed at it. Then the Not Too Deep podcast, which is Grace Helbig's podcast. Because Grace Helbig is a wiser person than I will ever be in my entire life. Despite the fact that I've always told myself I'm 22 but have the mindset of a 32 to 52-year-old individual. I'm 22, but my mindset's like 20 years ahead. I'm like a grandpa. But I guess that's a good thing. I don't know. And I just like the guests she has on. She has some good guests as well. And I like how planned out her podcasts are. Because we all know my podcast ain't planned out. I just start fucking talking. So let's see. Yeah. I like her. I like the thing she does where she asks all of her guests who they throw cold spaghetti at. That's quite the funny and charming segment. I would say I'd throw cold spaghetti at but I don't want the Secret Service to come kicking my door down, so I'm cutting that shit out. I'll just bleep out name. I guess I'd throw cold spaghetti at a bunch of neo-Nazis. Or those alt-right people. But then again, I'd probably get fucking murdered. So that would be bad as well. Fuck it. I'd still throw cold spaghetti at a bunch of neo-Nazis. I don't care. I'd probably get murdered by said neo-Nazis, but I'd still throw cold spaghetti at them. I don't give a fuck. Bring it on, bitches. I fear no man. Whoever you are, I fear no man. No. So yes, her podcast is great as well. And I think that's it for podcasts, to be honest. I think that's about it for podcasts that I can think of. So my next topic is, and this is going to deviate a bit, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because I don't give a fuck no more. And what I wanted to briefly talk about, or talk about it in general, I don't know, are just all of these crazy, like, I don't want to say crazy political people because that's too broad, but like all of these, as the kids are saying now, triggered individuals. People who now get triggered by everything. As a specific case that I'll start off with. Does anybody know of that lady? I think it was on YouTube or something, where she posted a video, or somebody posted a video of, it was some older dude. I don't know what the context was or what the background was or what, but apparently the dude made a dad joke and this particular woman heard it. Something about the dad joke being Hugh-Mungus. H-U-G-H. Mungus. Get it? Get it? No. It's an okay dad joke. So basically this older dude told her that dad joke.
You want my name?
Yeah, sure.
It's Hugh-Mungus.
Okay.
Which turned out to be the dude's actual name. I guess that's the joke. Hugh-Mungus was the dude's actual name. And the woman who's filming it proceeds to quite literally flip the fuck out.
Yeah, this person just sexually harassed me.
I said I'm Hugh-Mungus.
Yes, yeah, that's right. Hugh-Mungus what?
Hugh-Mungus.
So now you're actually pointing to yourself. Asking me to leave after I've been sexually harassed.
I'm just asking.
You're asking me to leave after I've been sexually harassed. Did you ask him to leave? Did you ask him to leave? Did you ask him to? Are you following?
She loses her shit. This woman goes ape shit. And all of you on SoundCloud will be able to hear the audio. This is what I'm talking about.
And go after the person who sexually harassed me.
Yes, that. She literally flips her shit. Which, in my view, I think she knew that it was just a dad joke. I think that she was playing that up just to get attention. And she starts screaming at, he's sexually assaulting me. In an Australian sounding accent, which is why I'm intentionally trying to make it as offensive as possible, even though that woman probably won't hear it because she probably doesn't watch anything with dudes in it, because she apparently hates men for some reason. First, a security guard steps up. I don't know where they're at. I don't know where this is taking place. I can't remember. I read it, but I can't remember. So a security guard comes up and tries to calm her down. She gets even angrier, screams even louder, screams the same thing. You're harassing me, blah, 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 blah. You're provoking me and blah, blah, blah. So then the cops show up. The Seattle Police Department shows up. It takes place somewhere in Seattle, so I don't know where it's at, but the Seattle Police Department shows up. Two officers the officers are just talking to her. The officers are just trying to calm her down. The two police officers in the video are just trying to calm her down. And then she doesn't do it, screams louder, gets even angrier, blah, blah, blah. And I don't know what happened after that. I don't know what the end result of that was. There's a second video where the same woman, and I'm assuming she lives here because the first video, the Hugh-Mungus thing, that was in Seattle, Washington, obviously. And then there's a second video of her going absolutely apeshit. I guess it's some kind of city council meeting or something.
And interrupt women when they speak, just as you interrupt me now. We saw how those crimes went up. We saw how the disgust and contempt.
Some kind of town council meeting or city council meeting or some kind of council meeting. And she starts yelling the same exact shit. Blah, blah, blah. I hate men. I hate men. Men are awful. Men are rapists and all that. She yells, screams, and the city council people are all nice and stuff, and they're telling her, "Ma'am, you're disrupting. Please quit yelling, or we will escort you, or you will be escorted out. Ma'am, please quit yelling. Please quit yelling. You're disturbing this meeting." And of course, she gets even angrier and louder, and so then they escort her out. And as they're escorting her out, she says, "Don't you fucking touch me!"
This
And
is
don't touch
disruptive
me.
personal attacks. Have her removed, please.
Turn off the microphone, will you?
I find her behavior disruptive, ma'am. Disruptive to the agenda.
As if that's going to stop the cops from escorting her out of the building. You screaming at them is going to stop them from escorting you from the building. Keep in mind that both of these videos were filmed. They have all of this shit on video because they're two separate videos, but it's all filmed, so they have it all on camera and audio. So that's what I'm trying to get at. All these people who are by everything now. Yes, racism is a bad thing, obviously. 98% of people will agree with me on that one. And other things like women's rights and racism and all that kind of stuff. Yes, it's all very serious and it should be taken seriously because they're serious topics. But I think she doesn't give a shit about women's rights and she's just doing this for attention. And I just feel like, you notice how the whole triggered joke thing, the whole triggered jokes and memes and things, you notice how those did not start. I don't remember seeing any of those until camera phones became a thing. Because don't you notice that almost all of them are filmed via cell phones and shit? Which leads me to believe that in most of them, the people in them don't actually care about what they're yelling about, playing that up for attention. Because that's how desperate people are nowadays. Everyone wants to be famous. So people all want to be famous, so they're going to do whatever they have to get famous, which is a bad thing. It ends up going real bad real quick. So yes, that was my point. I don't know. I just see all of this crazy shit. Like the people flipping out at other people and accusing people of false things. And I just have to think it's all fake. How can you live your life happily and act like a total fucking I don't understand it. So, yes. So I think that's going to do it for this week's episode. Hopefully, once again, like most of them, hopefully this one made sense. Hopefully. And hopefully you all enjoy the new title of the podcast and the new in development artwork. I'm not a graphic designer. I'm not some kind of graphic artist. So I'm not good at design. But I am decently good at Photoshop. So I'll keep working on the design for the podcast. I'll keep working on the logo and stuff. So that'll probably change. And if you guys like this episode, you all on SoundCloud can check out my other episodes. Just go to my tracks section. You can also leave comments, like the track and stuff like that. And you all on YouTube can like the video, dislike the video, comment on the video, comment horrible things, which I'm surprised hasn't happened to me yet because it's YouTube, but whatever. Once again, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you in next week's episode. See you guys.